Dwellers in Darkness, Chapter 1. Toa Hagah tightened his headlock on the Tartarak and tried to wrestle the beast to the ground. Hagah's mask of growth allowed him to reach almost the size of the creature, but he could not match the Tartarak in sheer strength. Still, he knew a few things about leverage and pressure points that the Rahi did not. With a roar, the Tartarak lost its footing and slammed hard into the ground of Xia. What was left of the island city trembled from the impact. "Now stay down," Hagah growled, even as Toa used his power to create bonds of solid stone for the monster. After a long battle, the Tartarak had battered the Kanoe dragon enough that Toa Norik's spinners had been able to slow it down, while Toa Kulis's ice attack finished it off. It now lay unconscious, sprawled across much of the southern district of the city. Toa Iruni had taken the advice of a vortex and made sure to move the creature's leg away from the mountain, so it wouldn't end up a big snack for that hungry landmark. Only Toa Hagah stood off to the side, her eyes fixed on the ocean, but unseeing. The Toa Hagah had seen her like this before. She was focused inward, using the power of her mask of clairvoyance to see things they could not. Now she stiffened, cried out, and turned toward the others. "They're coming," she said. "Hundreds of them." "Hundreds of who?" asked Iruni. He considered Hagah a good friend, but her vague predictions did have a way of getting on his nerves at times. "Seekers of shadows," Hagah muttered. "Slayers of the dark. Ready for war. Vortex cannot stand." Norik walked up beside her and gently eased Hagah to a seat on a rock. He knelt in front of her and talked to her in a whisper. Now and then she would nod her head. After a few minutes, he gestured to Kulis. Although the Toa of Ice was no longer a Rahaga, he had not lost his bond with flying Rahi or his ability to communicate with them. Now he signaled to a smokehawk up above and spoke rapidly in a language none of the others understood. A moment later, the hawk flew off to the west. "How is she?" Pooks asked Norik. "It's been a long time since she used her power," answered the Toa Hagah of Fire. "Or rather, since it used her. It's never easy." "What she said, Seekers of Shadows. What do you think it means?" "Isn't it obvious?" asked Hagah, shrinking down to his normal height. "Seekers of Shadows. Dark Hunters." The Smokehawk picked that moment to return, flying in tight circles above the island and cawing loudly. Kulis nodded twice and rushed over to his fellow Toa. "Hagah is right from the sound of it," he said. "My winged allies see ships coming, so many they blot out the waves. And the crews are armed, my friends. It's a battle fleet." Iruni had climbed up the top of one of the few spires still standing in the city. "Score one for the birdie!" he yelled down. "We have company! I'm going to check them out." "Iruni, wait!" began Norik. "Wait for what?" the Toa of Air said, smiling. "I spent thousands of years as a Rahaga. Now I'm back in action and I love it." An instant later, the Toa of Air used his mask of quick travel to teleport from the spire to the flagship of the oncoming fleet. He found himself standing on the deck, facing two powerful-looking figures. A handful of armed warriors immediately moved to surround him. "Who are you?" asked Iruni. "What's your business in these waters?" "My business?" asked one of the figures. "My business is profit, and that profit has been strangled for too long." "And who are you?" "I am Toa Iruni. My friends and I have just completed a mission on Xia. That island was half leveled in the process, and let me guess, you're here to level the other half." "My name is the Shadowed One," came the reply, "leader of the Dark Hunters. Standing beside me is my loyal lieutenant, Ancient. Standing in front of me is a very foolish Toa, if he thinks he can get between me and my goal." Iruni ignored the jab. "If you're looking to loot Xia, there's precious little left to steal." "Loot?" repeated the Shadowed One in mock surprise. "Steal? How little you think of me. Would I muster a fleet for petty thievery? No, Toa. I have made a bargain this day with a power I never knew existed, and my new allies have asked me to ensure that Xia provides no more weapons to the enemy. They wish me to blockade or occupy the island, but I do not believe in half measures." The Shattered One smiled, an expression as cold as one of Kulis's ice blasts. "So I am going to destroy Xia, and every last living thing on it. And if your friends are unfortunate enough to be there when I arrive, well, perhaps I will be merciful and leave enough of them to bury." Iruni raised his cyclone spear. Weapons were suddenly aimed at him from a dozen different directions. "This is my war," the Shattered One said softly, "and welcome to it." To be continued.